Hey, I'm Nick and welcome to my kitchen. On this week's episode, we're making Stouffer's Bistro cheddar steak and mushroom melts. And if you're not familiar with what a melt is, according to Google, a melt sandwich is a type of hot, closed sandwich containing bread, cheese, and some type of filling, such as meat or vegetables. The sandwich is then heated until the cheese is melted. It may be served as a closed-faced one. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the difference between a melt and a regular sandwich is, but I have to tell you that this Stouffer's Bistro melt is actually incredible. This is probably one of the best things that we've tried on this channel so far. Sometimes the freezer aisle disappoints, but in this case, it was actually delicious. We're just gonna try to make it better. Immediately, I thought making some kind of Philly cheesesteak spin-off on a homemade flatbread, so let's get making. We're gonna start by weighing 375 milliliters or 1 2/3 cup of milk that we're going to warm up in the microwave. You're also gonna need 100 grams or half a cup of unsalted butter, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 4 cups of all-purpose flour. The first thing we're gonna do is add our salt into the flour and give it a good mix until it's well combined. Next, pop your butter in the microwave for 30 to 45 seconds until it's completely melted, and then add it into your milk and give it a good stir until well combined. Place this aside, and now we're gonna start putting it together. Start by making a little well inside of your flour salt mix, and then adding in your liquids. Using a spoon, slowly start combining a little bit of flour into the liquid until you start to form a shaggy dough. Admittedly, I have two problems here. One, I probably should have mixed the milk and butter again just to help break down some of that solids. And then number two, I definitely didn't use a big enough bowl. Not an issue though. Once you get a little shaggy dough, turn it out onto an unfloured work surface and begin kneading it by hand for between 5 and 7 minutes. This is really gonna help form a smooth ball. Once your dough is nice and fluffy and there's no more dry spots from flour and it's been well kneaded, wrap it in saran wrap and place aside for 30 to 60 minutes while we prep and cook the toppings that we need. Go ahead and cut a medium onion in half and then slice it into thin slices. Repeat this process with a couple of mushrooms. You're gonna need about 6 to 8 ounces of cremini mushrooms. You're also gonna need 1 clove of garlic set aside, some Italian seasoning, and about 1 or 2 cups of cheddar cheese depending on how many you're making. Next, let's talk about the meat. We're gonna use a ribeye here because of the marbling. It's gonna cook really well in our pan. First, cut out all the big pieces of fat that are left in the steak, and then using your knife, cut relatively thin slices. It's a lot easier to do this if you pop this into the freezer uncovered for about 30 minutes. This is gonna help you get nice close cuts together, and you really want this to be cut thin because you wanna cook it for a very short period of time. In a non-stick frying pan over medium heat, go ahead and add a couple teaspoons of oil and then pop your mushrooms in there. Sprinkle with a little pinch of kosher salt. This is really gonna help to take out that moisture while we cook these down, which is gonna take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. Once you see some of the moisture releasing, go ahead and add in our onions and begin cooking both of these until your onions start to caramelize. This is gonna take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. Pull it off the heat and set aside. In the same frying pan, because flavor's king, go ahead and add in our steak pieces. I tried to not overcrowd the pan here, which is the best way forward, so cook it into 2 batches if you have to, and then combine it all back together. Once your steak is fully cooked through to your preference, I cooked mine medium rare, add back in your mushrooms and onions, taste for seasoning, add a little bit of kosher salt if you have to, and then set this aside. We're ready to start rolling out our flatbread. On a floured work surface, go ahead and cut your dough into 4 pieces. This recipe actually makes 8, so if you're following the recipe, cut this into 8 pieces, and you're gonna see why shortly. Go ahead and form these into a ball like I showed you in the Swanson's chicken pot pie video, using your hand in a circular motion to allow the stickiness to pull itself underneath. Repeat this process until you've done all 4 or 8 depending on which recipe you're following. Go ahead and flour a rolling pin and begin rolling these out. Now, I rolled these out a little bit too much, so they're not gonna fit perfectly in my pan, so you're really gonna wanna pay attention depending on how big your pan is. Now it's time to fry this flatbread. Go ahead and oil up a non-stick pan over medium-high heat and plop your flatbread into it. As you can see, mine didn't exactly fit. I had to fold it up and push the edges down, but it did end up cooking all the way through, which is good. Once it's golden brown, about a minute, give it a good flip, and then once the other side's done, about another minute, place it onto a paper towel lined plate. And we need a sauce, and I decided this at the very last second. So here's how you quickly make a bechamel cheese sauce. Go ahead and melt 2 tablespoons of butter and combine that with 2 tablespoons of flour that you're going to slowly add in at first, and then eventually add the whole thing and mix it well. Once it begins to boil, we're gonna add a little bit of milk at a time to make sure that we don't get too clumpy. At this point, I should have switched to a whisk, but I didn't, and slowly start adding in more milk until you've added the entire thing and whisked it all together. Once the milk starts to boil, turn down the heat to low and add in a couple of handfuls of mozzarella cheese. This is gonna add a really nice creamy texture to our melt. Once everything's well seasoned and everything gets a little gloopy, give it a good taste test, and now it's finally time to assemble this. Plop your flatbread onto an aluminum foil lined baking sheet, and then grab that piece of garlic, cut it in half, and rub it across the top. This will give a little bit of garlic flavor to your flatbread. Season with a little bit of Italian seasoning, and then coat the whole thing in nice bechamel sauce. Give yourself a healthy serving of the steak, onion, mushroom mix, and then top it all with a lot of cheddar cheese. Bake this in the oven at 425 degrees for 7 to 10 minutes until all the cheese is melted and beautiful. Give it a couple of minutes to cool before you handle it, and then using a spatula, fold it in half, and there you have it, a Stouffer's Bistro cheddar steak mushroom melt. And it's not YouTube if you don't have a beautiful cross section, so there you have it, stuffed full of deliciously cooked onion, steak, well seasoned. It was absolutely delicious. The only thing we couldn't pull off was the melted mozzarella on the outside, but hindsight, I should have just folded it, placed it back in the oven with a little bit of cheese on for about 2 minutes, and it would have looked exactly the same. That's it for this video, guys. If you liked it, please smash that subscribe button. It helps more than you know. Click that thumbs up and comment down below. Until next time, get cooking.